Welcome to the Hyperpolyglot Activist. Learn languages, make a difference. My name is Dr. Carlos Lopez, and today I would like to discuss with you my expectations for the upcoming language event at Edinburgh in the 2023 edition, 22nd and 23rd of April. So this is how it looks like on the website, and I'll make sure to put the link in the description below so you can navigate that page. Now, let's jump straight to the program, which was just sent to me by email a few hours ago. Now, this is the second time I will be speaking at this event. Last time was right before the pandemic in 2020. And I have to say that it was the most productive academic/cultural event in which I have ever been. Not least because during the Q&A, Alex Rollins, the guy you can see on the left on the screen, who is a very renowned polyglot, for those of you who are not familiar with him, suggested that I check the volume that you can see on the right side of the screen, Revivalistics by Ghilad Zuckermann, and that volume literally changed my life. It allowed me to get to know a framework that I wasn't familiar with for the revitalization of languages, and as a result, I adopted it for the purpose of a proposal which I put forward for the Marie Curie Fellowship, and that application was successful, and thanks to that, I'm here today working at UCL on the revitalization of Ladino by digital means in the 21st century. So it was really helpful. I really hope I can get a similar comment, a similar lead this time around. And without further ado, let's just jump straight into the program. As you can see on the screen, even before the 22nd, there's already a tour by Thomas Bach, who is going to be speaking on the 22nd with Richard Simcott. There's an Edinburgh tour. Sadly for me, I will arrive a little bit later, so I will have to miss that tour. And then we have an informal dinner/drinks at Le Bistrot. I will be able to join the rest of the participants there, and I think it will be great. I still remember how the 2020 edition was like, and I really enjoyed that time with the rest of the participants because, as always, the event itself is a little bit too formal to have the sort of interactions and conversations that you can have outside of the French Institute, which is where the language event is going to take place. So it's always great to have something to do outside of the building where the event will be held. Now, going into the 22nd, I'm really grateful that we're going to have a very early start. We start at 9:10, really, the talks. And the first presentation is not actually a presentation per se, but rather an interview between Thomas and Richard. And this conversation is going to be very interesting. As many of you may know, Thomas does work on neuroscience and languages. And I anticipate questions from Richard to be very interesting and informative for the wider audience. So I think this is going to be a treat. Then we have Anthony Paquete, whom, if I'm not mistaken, also spoke at the 2020 edition, talking about forgotten multilingual Eastern Europe. And then Marta Melnik is going to have a very interesting presentation on Newspeak, right? That conlang that George Orwell denounced in 1984, which stood for a scary version of the strong Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the idea that language constrains thought, so that if we don't have the words to name our reality, our own reality ends up being narrowed down. Of course, this is just fiction, but it contains a kernel of truth. So I wonder just how far down the rabbit hole we're going to go with this one. Surely it will make for a thought-provoking session. Then we have Kendall Nittiman with Nonverbal Mastery, and then the habitual group photo and lunch, coffee break and chat. And then Jared Gimbel is going to talk about quote-unquote artificial versus quote-unquote natural languages. If you haven't watched my video about this, please click on the link on top of the screen. And he will be talking about learning programming languages versus human languages. Is the process really that similar? So I suppose that the answer is no. The question is very much framed in that direction, but it'll be interesting to see how he discusses this. And then, of course, my talk, I'm going to be talking about not so much the Eastern variety of Judeo-Spanish as I did in the 2020 edition, but rather Haketia or Western Judeo-Spanish. I will discuss the history, so it's a diachronic perspective mostly, but also the language ideologies around this variety and the status of Hackathea nowadays in the 21st century. If you haven't watched it yet, please have a look at my 10-minute explainer on Hackathea, which is sort of an introduction for this talk, because yes, my talk will be recorded and eventually released on YouTube, but that might take 6-7 months. So in the meantime, you can always go back to this video to get just the basics of what I'm about to discuss in Edinburgh. I'll put the link in the description. Then there's a talk by Charlotte and Emily, whom I had the pleasure of meeting in person during the Polyglot Conference in Mexico last year. They'll be talking about Celtic languages, which is fascinating. Of course, the event is held in Scotland, so Celtic languages, Scottish languages are very much apropos. And this won't be the only talk related to this topic. And then the day after, the last day of the conference, we have a very interesting talk to begin with by Murad Yuri. Let's keep it real, try and test the strategies to bring real life into the language classroom with authentic visual imagery and realia. These kind of hands-on in-classroom experience talks are always very welcome, and I'll certainly draw inspiration from my own work as instructor and teacher at Oxford University and UCL. Then Chase Emery Davis, whose French I know is extremely good, will be talking about French and English with a wordplay here. Please excuse my French. Subsequently, Mark Bentleton will be dealing with how to build a language finder. This is very important because, as you know, this is the hyperpolyglot activist. Learn languages make a difference. So the entrepreneurial side of language learning is very important to me, and I'll be taking loads of notes. Then Tim Douglas, with whom I have interacted a lot as part of Hypea research, but never quite had the chance of meeting in person, will be also at the language event in Edinburgh. And his talk will be about Eastern languages, unsurprisingly, given his trajectory in recent months. And he'll be talking about learning Polish and Ukrainian in the United Kingdom. I'm really looking forward to it. Another group photo and lunch, yet another coffee break and chat section like the previous day. And then we have a special guest speaker whose identity has not been revealed. So I'm very curious about this. And the topic is discussion on women in the world of Scots. Then we have Martin DiMaggio, my colleague who lives in London, with whom I did an interview apropos Arvaresh. If you haven't watched that interview, please click on the link on top of the screen. And obviously, he's going to be discussing attitudes and intelligibility as language maintenance factors, very much apropos Arvaresh, which is his heritage language. Again, if you want to know more about this language, please do check the interview, fascinating one. And finally, we have Adam O'Brien. I hope I pronounced that remotely well. And he'll be talking about the Gaelic of SW Caithness. This, again, very much goes back to the idea that the language event is being held in Edinburgh, and Gaelic, Scottish languages are very much apropos. This is the program. I'm extremely excited about it. I think that my presentation comes at a good time for me, where I have had enough preparation to really showcase what Hackathea is about and getting people to understand the history and status and language ideologies related to this variety in a way that is both simple, accessible, but at the same time entertaining and edifying. So that's all from me. What is your favorite activity, interview, presentation? Please let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching.